Salutations, second grade friends. This book is so exciting. I mean, we're getting close to finding out where Mrs. Brisbane is. And the title of this chapter, oh my gosh, this is called The Case of the Problem Pupils. Now let's stop and ask ourselves, wait a minute, I heard that word pupils before. That means the same as students. So the case of the problem students. So now you have to stop and ask yourself, I wonder who that could be, or who is going to cause problems in room 26. So let's read to find out. I lost my watch, I heard Phoebe whisper to Kelsey before class began the next morning. They were standing right next to my cage, and Phoebe looked worried. In fact, I'm pretty sure she had tears in her eyes. Oh my gosh. I really hate to see a human cry. Oh no, your Daisy watch? Where did you lose it? Kelsey asked. Well, if I knew where I lost it, I could find it, Phoebe answered. Well, yeah, that made sense to me. Maybe it's in the lost and found, Kelsey suggested. You should check it out. Phoebe rolled her eyes. No way. You heard what Thomas said about the lost and found. It sounds like a creepy place. Yeah, Kelsey had to agree. Phoebe nodded. Besides, I don't want to go to Mrs. Wright's office. She doesn't like me. Anyway, the last place I saw was in the bathroom, but when I went back there, it was gone. I just feel terrible. My parents gave me that watch, and Grandma would be so disappointed if I lost it. Oh, I'm so sorry, Kelsey said. Okay, class, take out your homework from last night, Mr. E announced. I was spinning on my wheel at the time, and I was so amazed to hear him say homework that I almost fell off. Mr. E gave homework? When did that happen? I guess I must have dozed off during class yesterday. Who got the answer? He asked. I was surprised again when none of my friends raised a hand. Let me write that paragraph on the board so we can all look at it together, Mr. E said. Ooh, I raced to the front of my cage so I could watch as he wrote and wrote and wrote and wrote some more. This is what he wrote. This is an unusual paragraph. I'm curious how quickly you can find out what is so unusual about it. It looks so plain you would think nothing was wrong with it. In fact, nothing is wrong with it. It is not normal, though. Study it and think about it, but you still may not find anything odd. But if you work at it a bit, you might find out. Try to do so without any coaching. Paragraph didn't look unusual to me. Just sentences strung together with no mystery words like pie-whacked or pizzazz. Well, did anyone figure it out? Mr. E asked. A few hands went up. Mr. E called on Rosie. I think it's unusual because it has so many exclamation points, she said. Good answer, the substitute said, but there's something even more unusual. Next he called on Thomas. I think it's unusual because it's so long, he said. Mr. E nodded. Yep, it is long, but I've seen paragraphs that are a lot longer. While all this was going on, I read that paragraph over and over and over again. I'll give you a hint, Mr. E said. Something is missing. Eek! I squeaked as my friends all stared up at the sentence. Finally, Small Paul raised his hand. Hey, there's no letter E in it. E! I squeaked. He was right. That's correct. Did you know that letter E is the letter that shows up more than any other letter in the English language? Mr. E would know that. I'm sure he liked the letter E a lot, but I didn't know it. I think it was the first time I'd actually learned something since he arrived in room 26. So now, why don't you try to write a paragraph without using the letter E, Mr. E said. While you'll do that, I'll go get those cards ready to send to Mrs. Brisbane. My friends all went to work, but I didn't. I was too busy watching Mr. E stack up the cards. I wanted to make sure that my tiny little card was still with the others. Whew, it was. Then Mr. E looked at some of the cards. Joey, would you like to work on this card a little more, he asked. It doesn't have much pizzazz. No, okay, Joey answered. I don't have much pizzazz either. I like things simple. Some buttons, some yarn, a little glitter and glitz, Mr. E asked. Joey shrugged. Nope, I like it the way it is. This time Mr. E didn't argue. But I was excited because now I had some clues to figure out what pizzazz really meant. Og, pizzazz isn't like pizza at all. I squeaked to my friend. It's glitter and glitz. It's zing and bling. It's that little something extra, I explained. Boing! Og sounded a little pie-whacked. It's fancy instead of plain, I said. If you had a very fancy pizza, then I think you'd have a pizza with, say it with me, boys and girls, pizzazz! Og leaped into the water side of his tank for a swim. I'm not sure he understood what I said, but at least I'd figured out the mystery word. Now, if only I could figure out what had happened to Mrs. Brisbane, and why Mr. E was a teacher who didn't really teach, and where, oh, where was Phoebe's watch? After lunch, Mr. E gave the class free time. Yeah, he gave them a lot of free time. Some students read, some drew pictures, some of them wrote, some of them walked around the classroom, some of them even talked, something Mrs. Brisbane would not have allowed. For her, free time meant quiet. Only one of them talked to me, and that was Phoebe. Humphrey, I brought you a piece of apple, she said. This time I remembered. Oh, that's unsqueakably nice of you, I replied. I was very honored that forgetful Phoebe had remembered me. Phoebe leaned down close to my cage, so I was almost nose to nose with her. But I can't remember what I did with my daisy watch. She looked around to see if anyone was listening. No one, not even Og, who was swimming in the water in his tank. My parents gave it to me before they deployed, she said. They're both in the military, and I miss them a lot. They weren't supposed to be gone at the same time, but then they had to be. Ah, so that's why Phoebe was living with her grandmother. I just have to find it. I wouldn't want my mom and dad to know I lost it, she said. Yes, I told her. You have to try very hard. I hoped that somehow Phoebe understood me. Phoebe sighed. I think about mom and dad all the time. I guess that's why I don't remember things very well. Mrs. Brisbane was sending reminders home with me every night and calling my grandma when something important was coming up. Mr. E doesn't even do that. Then she grinned. Of course. He doesn't give us real homework and tasks. Yeah, I noticed, I told her. Would it be okay if I looked in your cage, Phoebe asked. I was thinking maybe it fell off while I was cleaning it. Oh, of course. Please look, I replied. To squeak the truth, I was sure it wasn't in my cage because I know every hiding place there is. But I thought it was a good idea to look, and it was awfully nice of her to ask first. After all, my cage is my home. And as much as I like humans, I don't want them sticking their hands inside all the time. Phoebe opened the cage door and poked around. She was doing such a good job of looking, I was afraid she'd find my notebook hidden behind the mirror. Whew, luckily she didn't. Well, I guess it's not in here, she said. I was wishing that you had found it and saved it for me, Humphrey. I wished her wish had come true. All right, and we'll stop there. Any ideas where her watch could be? Think about it.